Hello and welcome to MUSI260 week 8. This week we're going to be looking at mixing, in particular mixing for electronic music production. After we've gone through the couple of presentations which we have, I will need you to all watch the Linda tutorials. I've gone through and chosen a few Linda tutorials which are really focused on mixing, EDM mixing or EMP mixing, and there is so much to learn. It's such a big subject to go over. But anyway, let's get started with our presentation. So first up, let's go through the topics for this first section. What is a good mix? When to start a mix? Leveling and a stereo image. So these are pretty much the basic elements of a mix. So let's have a look at these. So what is a good mix? This is a big question because there can be various answers. Could be subjective, so to speak. But what is a good mix to you? Because you're the person that counts right now. So really listen to music and try to pick out what you like about it. What are the elements that have been pushed to the front, and why do you think they chose those sounds to be there? Where does the kick drum really sit in relation to the bass? Are the vocals sitting deep in the mix, or are they up front and intimate? So when we talk about electronic music production, particularly if we're talking about the dance genres, the relationship between the kick drum and the bass are really, really important because they both have a lot of low-end frequency that they're working there. So secondly, are the vocals sitting deep in the mix? Are they up front and intimate? So generally you'll find in electronic music production that the vocals are really generally up front, really right up front. So some questions to ask yourself. It's important to start to be able to make decisions about your music. If you've got a gut instinct telling you that there's a problem and you can't acknowledge it in your head, you're going to meet a brick wall at some stage. There are no rules in creating, mixing, mastering, or music. So every single mix is different, but there are some methods. The mix engineers and producers use as tools to pull this creation together. So when to start mixing? As I said before, not a hard and fast rule, but separating the writing and mixing stages can make a huge difference. It's easier to be creative in both fields without attachment to the opposites. So, for example, if you've finished your musical creation, your music is finished, the arrangement of the song is finished, the parts are all in the track as they are required, you've got your drums, you've got your bass, you've got your music bed, you've recorded your vocals, all those parts are in the song. Once you've done that, then that's the time to start mixing. So this brings us to leveling. So with the separation of the writing and the mixing process, you'll be comfortable setting all your faders to infinity, no volume, and starting a fresh mix. Yes, that's right. You've got to the stage, you've recorded everything in, and now it's the time to actually take everything down to the bottom again and start again. So this also gives you a chance to keep an eye on overloading any plugins or buses that were passed over during the creative process. So first of all, highlight all tracks, pull all the faders down to 0. In regards to leveling, a few terms that you'll be coming across. So dBFS, decibels relative to full scale digital audio. 0 dBFS, maximum possible level in digital audio before clipping occurs. Now, that's an important one. Clipping, exceeding the available headroom or flat topping the waveform. Headroom, amount of decibel left before clipping. and unity, which should be the default setting, where the signal is passed through on a 1-to-1 level. So a 1-to-1 ratio, no change in the level. So they're important terms to have and to understand. Digital clipping is one of the worst noises you'll probably hear. It's where you have a horrible distorted sound come through, and that occurs when you've exceeded your headroom for your mix, when you've pushed the levels too far. So here's a couple of tips about where to start. First thing, clean up your work area. Get rid of or group your unused tracks. Move all the drum percussion tracks together, all the bass parts together. Color code your groups to easily distinguish them. Start with the most dense sounds and move to the least dense. So drums, then bass, then maybe some musical elements such as guitar or pads, and then move on to vocals. That's pretty much the straight lineup that I use. It just brings you a way to focus on working on the track, so that you have a strong foundation and a clear view of how to place the more lighter sounds. If the drums have multiple tracks involved, kick, snare, toms, apply the same dense to least dense method to them. So kick first, then the snare, then some toms, then hi-hat, so on and so forth. If the bass sound has multiple tracks involved, start with the most prominent, work from there. So if you've got a sub bass and a buzz bass, probably put the sub first, follow it up with the buzz. If the song has a vocal, pull it up occasionally to keep focus on the big picture. So, stereo image and panning. Levels, volume, along with reverb and delays can create the illusion of distance or depth, while panning controls space and width. This is critical for a stereo image. Pan or panning is short for panpot, and panpot is short for panoramic potentiometer. Potentiometer is a fancy word for a knob. So there's a couple of reasons why we pan. So we create the illusion of width and space. We keep instruments out of the way of each other so the listener can hear them clearly. Often tracks sitting in the same area of the stereo field may clash and lack definition. Sometimes all you need is the turn of the pan control to give them separation. In this diagram, we can get an idea of how we might want to plot a stereo image of a band mix. Okay, so we can see we've got the drums there in the center, got the bass off center, slided to the right speaker, keyboards, right speaker, lead vocal center, guitarist between center and left speaker, and percussion predominantly in the left speaker. There. Here's another image. So here we've got some drums, how we might see that drum setting there, floor tom, cymbal to the left, the snare drum, the rack tom, the hi-hats and the crash slightly off to the right there, with your kick drum right in the center. Further on with stereo image is using the utility tool. So the utility tool is available in Ableton Live, and it can help you adjust the stereo width of a sound by using the panorama feature, so the panning, and give you the ability to select either left or the right channel only. It's also useful for adjusting gain levels if you already completed some automation from the channel, and we'll have some more on that soon. Furthermore, a delay unit can also be used to create a width effect, and you control the width by adjusting the delay time. Set both delay channels to time, Adjust one of them to the minimum time, 1.00 milliseconds. Move the other channel's delay time to hear the change in the stereo image. Now, playing with the stereo image of a sound this way can cause phase problems when you're in mono. It can be an adverse effect, so just be careful with that, but fantastic when you're working with stereo elements. Okay, so now just stay tuned for the next video. So as well as leveling, a really important element of modern music production is automation. And automation is one of the reasons that modern music sounds the way that it does. So let's jump right in and have a look at what we can do with automation. When you're creating the final mix of a song, it's important that all your tracks have the best possible volume levels. This means you should be able to adjust the volume level of your tracks whenever need be. So the mixdown isn't always about using the fader volumes as set and forget. In many songs you want to fade a track in or out over time. Most producers will automate the track volume to achieve these effects. So what is automation? So let's get started. Looking at level automation. So level automation allows us to make volume changes happen dynamically in time during playback. Automation can be applied to many parameters, but here we are looking at volume. There's more than one way to create automation. We're going to have a look at how to create automation in Live, but if you're using Pro Tools or Cubase or Logic or any of the modern DAWs, it's a very similar process to this with all of them. You just basically have to find out exactly where that section is for automation, and they all work in the same way. So it's just a case of looking through your manual and reading the automation. But the examples here are in Ableton Live. We can't give examples in everything, we just would run out of time. So we're just looking at Live here. So in the arrangement page under the track title, first of all you choose the automation source, the mixer, and then the automation type, in this case track volume. So you can see at the image there's two drop down menus, and the first one is what we're automating, and then the second drop down menu is what parameter of that device are we automating. So automation nodes are created by double clicking on the automation line, and you can get rid of one by double clicking on it. Once again, now if you want to create a volume transition, turning down or turning up, all you have to do is create two nodes and drag one down. The interesting thing to note is once you've created a node, you can't move back from it. You are actually locked in to where the actual node is, if that makes any sense. So if we have a look at the image there, we can see the first node on the left hand side, and then we have another node lower down on the right hand side. You couldn't drag the right hand side node back past your node on the left hand side. It's like just running into a brick wall. Yeah. Okay. You can also draw the automation in with the pencil tool. In Ableton, it's actually just the B button, the B key, that will bring up your pencil now, and the transition increments are determined by the grid settings. So if the grid value is set to 1/8 notes, then the automation increments will be in 1/8. It works exactly the same in Logic and Pro Tools as well, if you have those assigned. And the last way you can create automation is you can actually record the automation. So by arming the record button for the arrange move, range view and moving the fader as it actually plays through. And once again, same with Logic, same with Pro Tools, same with Cubase. You can also open an extra channel. Once again, all the major DAWs have this facility, so that you can open up a channel and you can actually see the automation laying there underneath the actual waveform of our track. Okay, great. Thank you. See you in the next video in a sec. Next up, we're going to be looking at equalization. So equalization or EQing is one of the best tools that we have to fit together the sonic jigsaw puzzle that is doing a mix. So EQs are used creatively to alter the frequency response characteristics of a musical source or a sound mix. So it's generally used to improve the fidelity of sound, to emphasize certain instruments, remove undesired noise, or to create completely new and different timbres. Many people believe that an equalizer is to boost power by raising signal levels. A lot of the time, an equalizer should be used to cut levels rather than boost them. So here we've got two different types of EQs, a analog EQ, which is from a company called Manley, which is a very well-established manufacturer of these types of devices. They also make compressors. And a digital EQ, this is from the Waves suite of plugins. Once again, they make lots of different types of effects, and this is the a paragraphic equalizer. There'll be more on that later. Okay, so equalization is all about frequency. So frequency is how many times per second a signal switches from positive to negative and back, measured in hertz. The average human's hearing range is from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, or 20k. So that range of frequency range of hearing, it's applicable for us and handy for us, but you know, there are animals, of course, that you've probably heard of that have a greater hearing. So it's quite well known that dogs can hear above 20,000 hertz. I think you might have heard of the silent whistle, which you can blow and a human can't hear, but the dog can certainly hear it and comes running back. And another animal that can hear below 20 hertz would be elephants. Elephants are known to communicate using what are known as sub-frequencies, but they're sub-frequencies to us because they're below 20 hertz. So the frequency spectrum is read using a logarithmic scale. It's divided in octaves, which is the doubling of the frequency. So 20, 40, 80, 160, 315, 630 hertz, so on. There's a couple of different types of EQs that we should be aware of. First up is the shelving EQ. So this is the type of EQ that you find on home stereo systems. We've all seen the bass or the treble dial, but it's also used in professional audio applications as well. A shelving EQ will either be classed as a low frequency shelving EQ or a high frequency shelving. So a shelving EQ has just one dial to cut or boost. It's often called a gain dial, and will have what's known as a shelving point. This is the point above or below which the frequencies will be cut or boosted by the same amount. So we can see on the graphic there on the left hand side, we've got a high frequency shelving EQ on the top and a low frequency shelving EQ on the bottom there. You can also see on the left hand side, we can see the frequency. So if we look at the top knob there on the EQ8 on the far left, we can see that the frequency where we actually start to boost is 3.17 kilohertz, and the gain is 10 decibel. And if we look down at the one below, which is the low frequency shelving EQ, we can see that the frequency where the shelve comes up is at 198 hertz, and once again the gain there below that is at 10 decibels. So that's they're both boosting in that situation, but they could also be cutting at that at those frequencies, and you would just change that by adjusting the gain knob to be negative rather than positive. Okay, here is a very important EQ mode, which is the high and low pass filter, also known as HPFs or LPFs. So they're different form of EQing, so they only attenuate, so they only cut the signal. They do not boost. And there are two main types. The high pass filter will attenuate frequencies below a cutoff frequency, and the high pass filter. So the cutoff frequency is measured at the point where the filter has actually cut off. So you can, once again, if we look to the left hand side, we can see we've got our high pass filter on the top, and we can see the frequency is 231 hertz, and that has cut the audio from that point there. And if we look at our our low pass filter, we can see that the frequency there is 412 kilohertz, and so anything above that has been cut on that one there. A bit more information on filters. So the steepness of a filter may also vary from one to another. This is known as the roll-off rate, and the steepness is measured in decibels per octaves. So a filter's roll-off rate is classed as either first order, which is 6 dB, second order 12 dB, third order 18, and fourth order 24 dB. So the 24 dB being the sharpest cutoff filter, and the first order 6 dB being the gentler slope there. Okay. Next up is our parametric EQ, also known as a bell or a peak. And the parametric EQ will consist of 3 dials per band: a cut and a boost dial, a center frequency dial, and a bandwidth dial, measured in either Q or octaves. So with a parametric EQ, essentially you can dial in the frequency where you want to cut or boost using the frequency knob. You can then cut or boost using the cut and boost dial, and you can also adjust your bandwidth, so how wide your frequency affects around the frequency you've selected. So how far that bandwidth affects the actual cutting or boosting of the EQ. Probably easier to explain it with a visual cue. So here we are. So here's our parametric EQ again. So this shows on the top a parametric EQ which has got a wide bandwidth. So that's a low Q. So if you have a look at the frequency on the top one, you'll see that it's 771 hertz. The gain is 9.34 decibels, and then the Q, which is that third knob there, you'll see that is 0.79. So that's a fairly wide Q. And if we have a look at the image underneath, we can see that the frequency and the gain is exactly the same, but the Q there is at a higher level, and we can see that's affecting less frequency around our center frequency because it's tighter, and that's known as a higher Q. Okay. Just to make sure you really understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the Q. So our bandwidth, okay, so the Q is the thickness of our affected frequencies. So a high Q is thin and a low Q is wide. So Q is the measurement of how much the equalizer band affects a range of frequencies. So a high Q means that the Q can control a lower envelope of frequencies, while a low Q is a larger envelope. A smaller Q means a wider range of frequencies are boosted or cut, while a larger Q is a narrower shape. Some EQs have a Q of 1, 2, and 3, and some are completely adjustable. So a Q will usually be a number from 1 to 10, sometimes higher for digital EQs, 1 for wide, 10 for narrow. Okay, let's have a look at the EQ that you would find on a mixing console. So it's the same kind of idea as with our digital EQs, and we can see at the top there we've got a filter, which is a high pass filter, and then we've got a shelving EQ at the very top, and then we've got a sweepable EQ, a parametric EQ for the high mid and the low mid, and then right at the bottom there we've got a low shelf. So nearly all mixing consoles will have some kind of arrangement much like this. So here's a nice little graph which will give us some idea about applying EQ, and let's talk about the reasons to EQ. This will vary on what we're trying to do. So reducing noise, for example, improve on a bad signal source, make several signals mix together better, create a special effect, or to emphasize the best parts of a signal. It's often called sweetening. And here we've got on this graphic the pitch ranges of some common instruments. So we can see there's a violin there, there's tenor sax, there's a harp, there's a piano, which of course covers everything from 28 hertz right up to 3,900. Yeah. Okay, when do you apply your EQ? Well, it can be applied at any stage during the recording process, overdubbing or mixdown process, or all three. There's a few pros and cons. Some engineers delay all their EQing until their mixing is completely finished, their recordings completely finished, and other engineers prefer to EQ during the recording so that they feel that they've optimized for each section. Before we start using an equalizer to sculpt sounds and audio in a song, it's always good to keep a clear picture in your mind as to what the goal of using an equalizer is. In essence, it's to make elements of the track smaller or narrower in order to make all the tracks collectively sound bigger. So, hence the sonic jigsaw puzzle. If you've got too much bass from your bass instrument, then your kick drum won't be able to come through clearly because it's working in the same frequency range. If you've got vocal that's really big and boomy, then maybe your guitar part isn't going to be able to work its way through. So, lots of different reasons for EQing. A few things to remember: the audio bandwidth of human hearing is 20 Hz to 20,000. As we looked in the chart just before, individual instrument or voice or sound carries a few slices or a few pieces of that puzzle. There's only so much space that we can have in the audio spectrum. If you fill it up with frequencies that overlap and conflict, you'll not be able to hear the music because there's too much sound. So we need to carve out frequencies that aren't being used in a sound in order to make way for other sounds that require that frequency to do its job or have its place in the mix. Remember, it's not how things sound isolated as it is important to how they sound actually in the mix. So as you become familiar with this process, you'll be able to roughly prejudge what's required by each instrument sonically as you build a mix and then adjust as required.